Hi, I'm Jennifer with True North Leatherworks, and today I am here to show you how to take my quiver kit and turn it into one of these quivers. I have two styles of stitching that I will show you how to do: the straight stitch and then a cross stitch over the edges. If you're unsure of which stitch is right for you, I will say that the straight stitch is quicker and easier to do. The cross stitch is a little bit more complicated. You got to pay attention to things a little bit more closely, and it will take longer, but it does look pretty cool when it's done. So just things to keep in mind as you're deciding which one you want to do. So first I'm going to show you how to do the cross stitch on the quiver. Okay, you will need a lighter at the end. Make sure you have appropriate adult supervision. We need some scissors for trimming the threads. When you open up the package, you'll find your leather, your thread, a needle with a little piece of tape on it. That just makes it so that you can easily find it. And then your leather with two straps already riveted to it. So you have one piece that's riveted on the inside, and then one piece that's riveted on the outside. It also has the Conway buckle on the shorter piece. We are actually going to go ahead and take that off, just so it's not flopping around as you're stitching. Now, so as you look at the strap, you might find some white stuff on the strap and possibly even on the leather that it's attached to. Don't worry about that. That's called bloom, and that's just the oils that are used in the tanning process coming up to the surface of the leather. If you're using it a lot, it will just naturally rub off in use. But if you haven't used it for a while, then it will start coming up to the surface, and then you'll just need to wipe it off. So if you have an old towel, old rag, old t-shirt, just get there and just need a little bit of friction. Even just your finger might work, depending on how much bloom you see. This one's got a little bit more bloom on it in some spots, but you just rub back and forth. And there you go. You may find some on the back side. It doesn't look like there's too much on the back of this one. I actually did rub all the bloom off the straps before they attached them, but I left it on a couple so I could show you in the videos, just because if these are sitting for a while, if you're not using them, you will most likely have to deal with this. So I just wanted you to know that there's nothing wrong with the leather, and it's very easy to take care of. So I'm just rubbing the back side and then the smooth front side. Okay. Now, one thing you might see on my samples as I'm stitching them together, or seeing the finished project, you might see, was it on this one? I think it was on one of the other ones. That there are a couple mistakes, like this one. I started punching the hole in the wrong spot. This is just for my sample. You won't find that in your actual quiver kit that you purchase. But at the same time, I knew that it could still be useful for me. But so just in case you spot that, you don't need to worry. You won't find that in yours. That was just me trying to make use of all the materials that I have as best as possible. Okay, so once you have your straps wiped down, you don't have any bloom left on them if that was an issue, you are ready to, actually you're not ready, because we need to thread our needle first. So on this one, you see, actually I wanted to talk about marks on the leather. If you look right here, you can see that it's lighter here. Looks just like a little bit of a crease. So if you look on the inside, you can see that there's a little bit of probably the knife that was cutting the leather, because this is a split leather. It's probably it just got a little too close to the edge there. So I'm using that in the sample, but that's not something that you're going to find on yours. Just because I feel like that kind of compromises the integrity of the leather. Okay, so I took the little washi tape off my needle. Again, that's just so that you don't lose your needle too easily. Now you can see that I am unlooping unlooping my thread, and you'll also see that it is quite a long piece of thread. I tried to come up with a easy way of doing this that wouldn't require too much extra work and would still look nice at the end. That was kind of my criteria for this. Okay, so what I have done, I have folded my thread in half. Doesn't matter at this point if it's exactly in half, because it's just going to move in a minute. But you want to have one end of your thread. You're going to thread your needle. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know what's coming. You're going to stick the thread through the eye, and then you are going to poke the needle, the tip of the needle, through the thread 2 times. Just like that, so it looks like a little bit of an S. Then you're going to slide that down your needle and your thread. Then you pull on your thread, and that locks your thread onto your needle. Without a knot, that would have a hard time going through some of the holes. And you're not going to lose it. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold our leather in half lengthwise. And if you look at the bottom, you can see that there's a gap, a larger gap between the 2 stitches in the middle than in the rest, between the rest of the stitches. And so that's where your fold is. So that helps you know that those are your starting points. So you're going to take your thread and okay. So there is a lot of moving back and forth on this, just because you want to keep the straps out of your way. Okay, so I put my thread through my 2 middle holes, and now I want to find the middle of my thread. So I'm going to take my loose end and my needle end. I'm holding that in one hand, and I'm just pulling the thread with the other so that I can be nice and centered. And then the end that's not on the needle, I'm going to kind of put to the side over there. And I'm going to refold my leather. Okay, so for this one, we were doing the cross stitch. So once we have our thread through our first 2 holes in the middle, we're on the, so this is the front side. Nope. Yes. This is the front side. I'm holding, it doesn't matter really which side you start on, whether it's the side with the strap down at the bottom or side without, because we'll finish it off up at the top and we'll get the knot on the correct side. So I'm holding it folded with one hand, and my thumb is also holding that thread because I don't want to pull the thread through as I start stitching with this part, because then my pieces will be unequal, and that could cause some problems depending on how unequal they are. you want to try to keep the threads as equal as possible. And so we are just going in on the back side and out on the front side. And you're just kind of wiggling to find the holes. And basically we're just kind of doing little diagonal stitches all the way. These are all just one direction because of how we're doing this. There is actually a way to do this kind of a stitch with 2 needles, where you would have both needles going at the same time. That's a little bit more complicated, and it's a lot easier if you have a stitching pony, which I'm sorry I can't include in a kit. So I'm opting to show you the easy way out on this stitch. It still looks good. It's probably a little bit slower to do it this way. But I think it's easier for those who are just starting out. So as you can see, I'm just making sure that I'm always keeping my stitches evenly spaced. Because of the way this stitch is, you do want to, if you pay attention to the details like I do, you'll want to make sure you're straightening your stitches as you go. If that doesn't matter to you, then you don't need to. Just my tendencies like to have things look nice and even. And so you'll see me pushing the threads around a little bit just to even them out. And it is easier to do as you're going rather than to do all your stitching and then try to straighten things out, because you could end up with threads that are a little bit looser or tighter in different spots, and that could maybe be a little bit problematic. Okay. So as you can see, I am pulling my leather, again with the leather. So I'm pulling my threads snugly, not so tight that the leather bunches or puckers. You don't want that. But also I am not leaving it so loose that you can see space between the pieces of leather. That's not going to give as good a finished project. Oops, and right there you can see that I went in on the wrong side. So one way you could do it is to just pull it back out, but sometimes the eye of the needle gets into trouble if you do that. And so I am actually just going to take my tip and push it back through. The thing with that is you have to make sure you're not piercing your thread with the tip of your needle as you come out, because then you'll need to untangle that as well. Okay, so now back on track, making sure I'm being consistent with all my stitches as to the side I'm going in and the side I'm going out. Here you can see they're not quite as evenly spaced, so I'm going to stop for a second. I like to use the tip of my needle to kind of pull at the stitch a little bit if I want to adjust how it's laying. And this also, as I'm doing this, I'm also trying to make sure that my edges are lined up nicely. Again, your level of detail is completely up to you. This is just how I like to do it. That is the downside of these extra long threads. They do tend to loop up and catch on pretty much anything they can. I was doing some sewing earlier, and this fleece I'm wearing has a pocket. Not this pocket. One down here, a little kangaroo pocket. And the edge was poking out, and the thread kept catching on that. Which just, don't know how I did it, but it kept doing it. So your loops might catch up on things, and you'll have to untangle them. We do have quite a long seam that we're stitching here, though, so you do kind of need that longer thread so you can have a nice unbroken stitch, a nice unbroken seam all the way down. If we did shorter threads, we'd have to knot them partway through, and it just wouldn't look as nice. So that's why I opted for the longer threads. Just remember to make sure you're pulling your thread just a smidge so that you're not too loose. Another reason not to have it too loose is that your thread might not be long enough if you don't pull it snug enough. I tried to give you extra thread, but if you do the whole thing with looser stitches, you'll run out of thread. I was trying to balance enough thread to do the whole seam without having to get more, but not so much thread that it catches on everything. So on this one, oh, I think I did that. Yeah. There we go. Okay. We got one stitch left. One hole left, sorry. Okay. So what I'm going to do here. Okay. So you can see all these are angled. But on this last one, I'm going to go back. So I came out this one, but I don't have any more holes here, so I'm actually going to go back in that one right there on the top, because this is the top of our quiver. We want to make sure that it's as secure as possible. Okay, and so I'm actually going to snip the thread. I've got a few inches left over. Okay, I'm just cutting the thread off of my needle. There we go. piece that we had left. And we're going to rethread our needle, just as we did at the beginning. Once it's threaded, we poke the tip of the needle through the thread twice, like that. And then we slide it down onto the thread, then pull the thread, and we have our needle locked on to our thread. Okay, so now I'm going to come back over here to where I started, and here we have our thread. So now this is where we start making our X's. So you're going to see that if you take this thread that was in the first hole, to make an X, we need to go to that second hole. And our X's are going to be across the edges of our quiver. So you can see that they're there. Okay, so again, just as before, I'm going to be doing a lot of shifting of the threads. And so I came out this one, so I'm going to cross over again, and so I'm just going to go down to the next hole. You can see that I've got 2 threads in this hole, and this one has 1. So if you're ever kind of get turned around and you're not sure which hole you're supposed to use, just check and see how many threads are coming out of it. Okay, so again we have that. And again, I'm just making sure that the threads cross each one. Something there. You can see me kind of wiggling the needle back and forth, and that's just me feeling for the hole with the tip of the needle. See, everything's crisscrossing. And now we're past those corners, and so we're just going to go down the straightaway now. Okay, so here you can see I'm almost done with my stitches. So I'm going to continue to cross my X's. Okay, so now, okay, I don't want this thread getting pulled into the other side. Depending on where your holes land, it might want to do that, this top stitch, or you might be able to convince it to stay down on the other side. Anyway. Okay, so I'm going to hold on to this thread. You can see I'm right here. I'm going to go into this hole. This is crossing my final X, coming out the other top hole. There we go. Okay, and then just like I did with this side, I want to come across to here. This one gets a little bit snugger because you have so many threads going through the same hole at this point. And I'm just going to embrace that. It wants to be up here, so that's where it's going to go. I think on this one I had it down just below. Just depends on where your holes end up. I try to be consistent with my hole punching, but let's face it, I'm a human. I'm not perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our loose piece here, and we are going to bring it around over here. Then we're going to tie a knot, and this one you want to try to get as close to the hole here as you can. So I'm going to tie a square knot or a double knot. Go pull it snug. This is waxed thread, so it will slip and slide a little bit. So make sure you don't go too snugly on accident. Then I'm going to take my threads. I'm going to snip close to the knot. You can see I have just little tiny little threads there. because the wax thread likes to slip around, we're going to melt the end. So now we're going to take our lighter, make sure that you have appropriate adult supervision, of course, because I don't want you getting burned. And I don't want you burning your project either. If you're not careful, it's very easy to melt the threads too much, or even to scorch your leather. So I'm going to hold it parallel. I'm going to hold the lighter parallel to my project here. You can see I've folded it to kind of put that up and most visible to the lighter. I prefer these longer lighters just because then I'm not right up close to the flame. So I am going to carefully melt. I'm just trying to melt the ends of the threads. It's getting there. As you melt it, you want to squish it down. If you've seen any of my other videos, I do tend to use my fingers. But that's because I've been doing this for a while. So don't do that. You can burn yourself. Anyway, so now you can see we've got a little bit of a waxed thread blob right there at the top on one side, but it's the back side. So now we have our stitching complete. And I'm going to hang on to those for a minute. I'm going to show you something with those. So now we're going to put our buckle back on. So you want to take your short piece and you are going to thread it through. Now a Conway buckle, which is what this is frequently used for straps that you don't need to adjust very often. Like for leather bridles and stuff like that. You set it and forget about it. You don't need to constantly be adjusting it. But it lays pretty flat. You just want to make sure that you have this part against your body. Not this part, that'll hurt. And then I like to kind of smush it in a little bit, just make sure it's seated well on the prong. And there you go. And so now you can adjust it depending on how tall or short you are, what you're more comfortable with. One thing I wanted to show you, if you are on the shorter side, like me, although actually this is, I used my 10-year-old to decide on the length of this, to help decide on the shorter end of things, and he is shorter than me. So if you need it on the shorter length, and then you have this flap just kind of hanging there, the end of the strap, and it bothers you, I'll show you something. So you take the end of your thread, and what we're going to do is, so I'm going through my knot, through my hole, and this would be your bottom, your second to bottom, whichever. And so I've just made a loop with both ends over here. Then I'm actually going to cut this off my needle. This might actually be a little too short. Okay, and then I'm going to take those two pieces and bring them around to the back and tie a knot. Now, if your thread is not long enough to do this with, you could use, you know, a piece of string, a piece of yarn. I just thought that using the thread would look good because it matches the leather of your strap. So I'm just trying to do another square knot. So I actually think the piece of thread that didn't have the needle on it was longer, so I really should have used that one. But, you know. Okay, so I've got my little square knot, got my little tails there. So you can see there's a little bit of movement there. So as I adjust, if I adjust this so it's the strap is, this tail is shorter, as I get taller or whatever, this will still move. So it's basically acting like a strap keeper that a watch would have or a belt. But it's just some thread. So I'm actually going to trim these really quick. As I've said, waxed thread slips around, so it doesn't necessarily want to stay in a knot. Just going to melt that knot in the ends a little bit, and then you can see I'm using the end of my lighter. So you can use the end of the lighter, the metal part. I think the end probably works better than the metal part, just because the metal doesn't seem to squish it quite as well. And so there you have that. So it's not super noticeable, but now it's not going to be just kind of hanging around getting in your way. So if that's something that bothers you, that's a quick and easy fix for it. So now you have your quiver. So the quiver does fit actual arrows. These are ones I think we got at probably Walmart to go with my recurve bow from my 4-H days many moons ago. Yeah, so just your standard arrows will fit in here. These arrows don't actually have points on them, except for one made of duct tape. And then I don't know why we have duct tape on that one. Anyway, so if you have practice points on your arrows, your quiver will probably be fine. Anything sharper than a practice point, I don't know that I would actually use that in here, just because this is just leather. So if you have a sharper tip, like what you would be used for hunting or anything like that, that would just tear up the inside of your quiver super fast. So I would definitely not recommend using your quiver for hunting arrows. You'd want a reinforced one for that. But for practice points, you should be fine. Or if you're just doing make-believe with wooded owls as arrows, that works too. So whatever. And then just kind of slings over your shoulder. I'm not going to do that because I adjusted the strap to the shortest and it's not going to fit over me now. So anyway, congratulations on finishing your quiver, and I would love to see pictures of you making them or using them. I think it's always fun to see what kids come up with, because I think it's done one way, I know that there are many other ways of doing it. Yeah, you guys are creative. I love seeing your creativity. Okay, have a great day.